Yeah.
Daniel, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Ming. Thanks for the kind invitation to speak. Hi, everyone from China. Hi, Danny here from Singapore.
Hi.
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? I mean, so what apart from CNN are we actually expecting? But I just wanted to take us one step or two, in fact, a few steps back, right? I mean, when we actually do AI in healthcare, I always wanted to emphasize the importance of the label, the ground truth, right? What is the true truth, right? I mean, those are the things that I see if you actually don't feed your brain with the right dictionary, whatever brain that you are having is useless, right? So that is something, a very basic principle that we all need to know, right?
Yes.
So that's point one I want to make. The second point is that we know there's a lot of off-the-shelf CNN and whatnot, right? You have RCNN, you have like DRL, you have tons of different techniques that you can actually employ. The thing is that, though, I mean, again, going back to the first basic principle, what is the intended use environment, right? Whatever we do, we can actually publish good papers, research, very high impact journals. But I mean, to impact the patient's care, we really need to know one thing that is going to help you to change your management tomorrow. And sometimes it may not be the sexiest things that you can do in the AI field, but it may actually translate to a huge patient benefit. So those are the things that usually we need to also balance. That's the point number two that I want to do. What is something that we are facing on the ground, the true clinical unmet need that we need to use the technology like AI, machine learning, deep learning, or different digital solutions to help us to solve in the clinical setting. So those are the two different things before we even talk about the very high-tech, next-generation related digital innovations technology that we're talking about. So that's point two, right? And then thirdly is that, where are we now? Where are we seeing ourselves in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years, right? This is something that we always need to think about, and this is something that I always think about for my lab. Do I want to do something that the whole world is doing right now, or do I want to do something that the whole world is not doing, and can I predict where the AI is? This is also another question that you are trying to ask, right? So I mean, just doing a horizon scanning right now, we are hitting into the AI implementation era. When we want to implement that, of course, right now we are talking a lot more about just a diagnostic or classifier right now. We are talking about the governance, the reporting guidelines, right? So, I mean, those are the huge areas that's happening in the AI space now. How can we regulate AI? What is the governance for AI? What is called the responsible AI? How do we not inject bias into AI, right? How do we explain about AI? So those are the big fields that you can actually come up with a career out of it for the next 5 to 10 years time, just zooming into one particular area. So I also wanted to make sure that the scientists in the hall actually do make sure that don't get carried away with the very new, the CNN and what, the next generation convolutional neural net that, that is happening. Of course, it's very important, don't get me very wrong. But when we talk about AI in healthcare, this is a very unique space that is not just about the technical network, but if you actually even devote the percentage between the clinical data sets versus the technical importance, I would always make a 90% on the clinical side and 10% on the technical side if I were to make a weight. Not saying that one area is more important than the other, but it's just that the clinical data sets, the complexity of the clinical space is just way too unique as compared to other non-medical space. I mean, this is just a few points I just wanted to share for everyone's discussion. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Any other opinion? Yeah. Shall we invite Dr. Han for next questions?
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the invitation from the conference. And yeah, any more comments from on the web?
Dr. Kim, do you want to say something to answer questions?
Any more comments from the website?
Well, I had a very small comment of what Dr. mentioned about the unmet need when one can play a major role. That's I think is key thing at this point where AI can play a major role in areas of unmet needs where there's a resource scarcity and more importantly of prediction, which is what is going to be. It's not there to replace the expertise, as he mentioned, the ground truth or the real truth is what the clinicians at the end says. So we are replacing that, but we are also bringing all these new tools to aid in their absence and also help the clinicians in terms of predicting outcomes. So that's what we need to That's all I get.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments, for your opinion. So I'm an ophthalmologist from the eye center. So I'm a clinician. So let me just talking about my experience in the clinical practice, which is relevant to the AI. So I think generally to speak, the ophthalmology actually is a faculty which is very mostly demanding the AI the affiliation because the ophthalmology is based on the large quantity, large volume of the images, particularly the eye fundus images, like diabetic retinopathy, just introduced from specialists or experts just now. So many fantastic achievements, just referring to the DR, diabetic retinopathy, and also the AMD and pathological myopia and some quite multiple eye fundus disease, which have to make a diagnosis and the treatment based on their images. So with such a large quantity of the images, the clinician or the ophthalmologist have to make the diagnosis and treatment based on these images. So processing and screening, identification of these lesions is a task of very dauntingly heavy. So if it is only based on the human labor, so in the past time we have always done like this. But in the modern society, more and more diseases seems to appear, particularly with the more and more heavy electronic task. So we have the human eyes have the very heavy burden of the visualization, okay, based on the electronic screening. So I can expect with maybe in the next decade, more and more cataract, more and more AMD, more and more eye fundus disease will appear. So in China, the licensed ophthalmologist is only 30,000. So but China has a 1.4 billion population. So for example, for the pathological myopia, now the prevalence of the myopia in China is 50%, but the high myopia is estimated to be 10% of the high myopia patients. That means there is at least 70 million people is high myopia. So quite a number of these PM patients, they have the macular lesions. So if we have to screening and make the diagnosis on this in this population, the volume would be dauntingly heavy. So they have the big space of the intelligence, artificial intelligence in this, at least in the ophthalmology area. So my team in the past 4 years, we have developed an AI deep learning system to affiliate the clinicians to identify identify the lesions of the pathological myopia. It actually is based on the MetaPM's classification system, and we also can use this AI to recognize the lesions of the PM, including the CNV and the Fuchs lesion and the leg cracks. I think during this development of the algorithm, I feel that the database is very important. The quality of the database, the number should be sufficiently large, and it should be harvested from the multiple centers. The source should be from the multiple institutes, and the quality of the image should be good. And more importantly, the labor. That means the specialists or eye funders to label the lesions. This work quality should be high, should be reliable. Just like a teaching, the teacher should be good, and then the students will be good. This is the premise for developing the subsequent AI algorithm. And then we also have a good partner. It's the AI team, very strong AI team. Then we just send the data to this AI team, and they developed this very quick. And now, actually, our software is commercially available now, which has been applied in our eye center. And the clinical outcome is, the performance is optimistic, it's good. But always it's on the way to develop and to optimize. So my feeling is that during this development work, so just now some specialists point out the setting of this use. In my eye center, many specialists of ophthalmology, maybe they do not have this demanding to use this AI, because we have the expertise to recognize, to make diagnosis based on myself. We can read these pictures myself. But the point is, the work is too heavy, maybe because we are human. With such a heavy clinic duty, I will be the fatigue, and the repeatability of the reading and diagnosis will be maybe really degrading after 20 patients, 30 patients, 50 patients today. Maybe the first one is good. Maybe in the 30th one, I will make a mistake. If with the affiliation of this AI, this will help me to rule out some or less, to rule out some low-level mistake to help me. But I think it is more important, most significant setting is the primary care institute, or just the optometry institute, or some healthcare management institute, or some primary care, just the society institute. In these institutes, they are in short of the ophthalmologists, let alone the specialists. So this AI can just play an important role in the screening of the very primary in screening of this eye disease. So this is my feeling in this during this development of our product. So that's also any comments from the audience or the specialists from the website.
Maybe I can get a few details.
Yeah.
So in my understanding, the current AI is really at a baby level, because we are only be able to make a classification for a couple of defined eye diseases. They never even close to how a doctor manage or diagnose in clinical practice. So, but then it also our trainings heavily depends on these arbitrary label images. So a lot of people haven't really used real-world clinical data, because in real world, we actually, for example, in the real world, we have a patient in front of us, we actually have the historical data, like visual field changes in 3 years. We understand all this data. But this data never be able to use all together, and then we just never be able to use all these data to really make a meaningful diagnosis, just as close as to how a human make a diagnosis in practice. So this is a real challenge. And secondly, at the moment, as what I mentioned before, the AI is able to do very simple classification. It's good for some screening setting, like for example, when eye professional, optometrists, ophthalmologists not available. For example, in an endocrinology clinic or in GP clinic, that will make a lot of sense because we don't have access to eye professional. So, but otherwise, in the eye hospital or eye clinical, or like for example, eye department, I don't don't see any role for the AI, because the doctors is just, eye professionals just that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor. So my feeling is that this AI affiliated system, I feel that there is two versions now available, commercially available. One is offline, another is online version. So I think maybe the online version is the direction of the future. I think because of for the offline version, the software will help to make the diagnosis or the screening, provide a screening result. It's alone. But sometimes it's not reliable because the machine is a machine. Maybe it will make a mistake. It's not controlled by the human's diagnosis. Maybe it will make them mistaken. Maybe the result will be disaster. So, am I right?
In my opinion, the accuracy is not that much depends on whether it's offline or online.
Yeah.
Actually, when we run the AI screening program in the indigenous community in Australia, they have no internet. They don't have any internet in the field, so we don't manage to upload. Actually, that's why we design this offline solution. Also, we simplify the neural network so it can be faster, less dependence on GPU and so on.
Yeah. Maybe
I don't think there's anything to do with the connectivities, whether the online and offline. Because when you actually build an AI algorithms, you would have already frozen that, right? So before you actually apply for any regulatory approvals and stuff, you need to tell the regulatory, the government, right, to say that is it a standalone thing where your AI can already be an autonomous way, right? So this is a global way of assessing AI, whether it's not offline, online, but it's more of autonomous versus semi-autonomous, meaning that it's an assistive tool. So whether you need human to actually be in the loop to help make the decision, or versus whether the AI can make 100% of the decision. So this is something that is, when you submit the regulatory approval, you have to actually mention. That's one. Second is that once we actually frozen the algorithm, of course we can do store and forward, that is another thing, right? Where do we deploy the AI? Can we actually do a cloud? That is online, we can do it, at the very live feed kind of basis. You drag and drop, you get your answer straight away. But also you can actually deploy, like what Ming said, right? Offline, but you actually deploy it in the computers, right? So you actually create the API and deploy it on the desktop, laptop, or any forms. The third way of deployment is to embed your AI algorithms in your retina cameras. So when you actually take a picture, you get the AI to run the analysis, and then you get the diagnosis straight away. So those are the three main points of deployment for AI in the healthcare right now. So whether it's retina imaging, X-rays, or other, the dermatology, skin images related type of AI, those are the three main types of the ways that we deploy AI in healthcare. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for your thanks for the Professor Ting. So I have a question that in your country or in your clinical practice, is the AI the result given by the AI is finally justificated by the ophthalmologist or the specialist, or just let the AI give the final result? No matter the diagnosis or just provide some information?
Again, there's a two way that we actually doing this, right? So, in the Singapore setting, we have a national screening program. So, the screening program itself, usually we do 2 tiers, the readers. So, that's before the AI era. So, I just wanted to highlight the pre-AI workflow and how AI actually has replaced some of the workflow on the national the setting. So 2 tiers are screening by the human. So the junior graders will rate 100%, and then they say, hey, this is abnormal. Then can you take another read? Then the more experienced grader will come and take a look. Oh yeah, it's very abnormal. Please refer to ophthalmologist. But they say, hey, actually, hang on. This is not that abnormal. Please keep it in the primary care. So that was the pre-AI, the workflow. When we actually have invented the Selena Plus about 6-7 years ago, we are actually trying to replace the human graders on the tier 1. So within the national platform setting, it was designed to be an assistive tool within the national screening platform. But outside the screening platform, there's also another version that we actually do an autonomous AI, meaning that AI, when once it makes the diagnosis, that stands alone already without the human intervention. So what the action that has resulted on that is to determine whether this patient would then need to go to see ophthalmologist or this patient will need to come back for rescreening in a year's time. So there's a two different versions depending on the intended use environment again. Yeah.
How are these legitimated by the government or also authorized by the government? I mean, the fully automatic diagnosis by the AIs, is it authorized by the government in Singapore?
Yes, so we have actually obtained approval from the Singapore government and also the European CE and also the 5 different other countries to actually use AI as the autonomous diagnostic device. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Very smart government. Thank you. Thanks.
So, thanks for the discussion, and I also have some other questions. First, because a lot of young investigators here, so I want to ask questions for them. The first question is how to engage young investigators to this field, and how to encourage young investigators to actively participate in international organizations. Thanks for your suggestion. Yeah.
I think, Ben, you're the best to answer this.
Yes, please.
Yeah. To answer, I mean, you're like the boss or president for APTOS. That is the platform that, it's a very good platform. Okay, so, I mean, just using this as an example, I think attend more conferences, I think that's a good start, right? So, for instance, this is a very good platform that Ming has organized, the APTOS, for instance. This is a way, or actually a platform to gather a lot of the like-minded people and led by, the experts like me, to actually see how we could actually come together at the different generations of ophthalmology, scientists, or whatnot, to actually collaborate as a team and to discuss some of the new things, but of course also the challenges. We also need to, I always feel that sharing is always a good start. Sharing over a dinner or drinks, of course, that's the best way to share. So, I mean, those are the things that I think we are stepping into a digital era right now. Whether you like it or not, I mean, I always told my juniors that, right? Whether you like it or not, you will still use your, your iPhone, Samsung, in China, you use Huawei and whatnot, you will go into your Weixin and everything, right? It's so digitally connected. So, I mean, I'm not going to be biased towards AI and digital technology, but this is something that is really, we cannot live without. You go to your car, there's a lot of the electric vehicles that come out. You also know we are now looking at going into the Mars, going to space shuttles, and a lot of the different things, if you don't adopt the AI or machine learning or deep learning, we cannot survive. In healthcare, it's the same thing. I always feel that healthcare, the new technology is, we are the slow adopter because our rules, the governance is very strict. So before technology like AI, machine learning, or the other newer generations of the digital tech to come into the real world practice is always very tough. During this very tough journey, how do you make sure that you don't get disheartened? How do you make sure that when you experience failure, how do you fall and then climb back up again and then and emerge stronger from your previous failure experience? It's something that you need a network of peer support. So conference and joining the different the societies, I think is a good start. But of course, you say, oh, now I want to be very professional. I want to really devote my career, my next 30 years of my life. So I did that like about 7, 8 years ago. I did my PhD, not so much in the AI space, that was 10, 15 years ago. But that time I was already practicing, ophthalmology. Not only that, also I was focusing more on the ocular imaging, and these are the very valuable assets to be fed into the AI space. So those are the things that has sparked my interest, and of course, you see, I want to devote, my interest like a lot of the young scientists here. So what is the next step? How do I do better? I think having a PhD, having a good mentor always helps. My personal mentor is like Ken Wong. He really have. I really cannot say how much I'm actually grateful to him for bringing me up. For the past 7-8 years. I think the point number 2 I wanted to make first is, you need a peer support. You always need to share your challenges and stuff. Second is you really need to find a good mentor who is very selfless and is prepared to nurture. And when there is an opportunity, who will be selfless, giving it out to you. I think this is some of the key points of my success so far that I've actually were very lucky and privileged to have. And of course, the third thing is then after you do, then publication then comes into play. So when you publish more, then of course, then in the international arena, people will start quoting your papers. Then your name will start coming out, and then of course, I managed to catch his attention and say, okay, now I'll get Daniel to speak, for APTOS and things. Yeah, so you have to get the big guys like me to actually realize, there's this small fry, trying to emerge and things. So those are the things that I feel is very important to work hard. I think be persistent and then find the right mentor and work smart as well. And yeah, so those are things that, of course, we are here. Anyone who's interested, please reach out. We are always happy to help. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for the sharing. And is there any opinion from Dr. King?
I just wanted to add to what Daniel said is that you need a focus. You can't be everywhere. There's lots of things in this, today out there. But you need to identify your area of focus and work towards it. That's when you really succeed and go into the depth of it, rather than, placing your hand everywhere. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ke, can you give us some suggestions?
Yes, actually, different phase of the life in different tasks. So I think a lot of junior doctors sitting here, I think in my recommendation is just focus on the clinical work. Get yourself ready to see your patients, and then later on, and then when your clinical training is completed, then you are really able to, and then the second step should be at your research time. So you just, for example, after promoting to attending doctors, you are completing clinical training, then you consider maybe you could, it all depends on the hospital system. So in a good hospital, like the National Eye Center, they protect their time. But attending doctor or junior consultant, they have 1 or 2 days research day, so that would make a huge difference.
Okay, thank you. So last but not the least, another questions. I just noticed that most of us use the data, use the imaging data for the AI ophthalmology. Is there any other biomarkers that we can use to increase its accuracy? Is that impossible? That means we can combine with the biomarkers and with images to increase the diagnosis accuracies.
And you go first.
I think we.
We also have some local. In the auditorium, there's quite a lot of researchers as well. I recommend Dr. Ye Jane to answer this question.
Okay, maybe this question is yes.
As to the biomarkers, and we often use the photo. And CT, like CT is easily to get from CT, and also some photo for the founder's photo pictures is very easy to get. And as oculoplastic surgeon, we have the tumor. So we have the tumor slides. As the slides, we also have the research project. On the slides, we have the picture, photo, and also biomarkers on the slides. So to improve the accuracy of diagnosis to different level of doctors and different level of hospitals, like the local area and also in our center, in our affiliated university affiliated hospital. So the diagnosis level is different. So we try to add a biomarker, add other markers to the slides to improve the diagnosis accuracy.
Okay.
Is this right?
Thank you.
We also have the cooperation work with Professor Si, and also we try to get more and more
information.
progress.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for all the speakers here and online. I have several questions. I have one question. So I'm very glad to see that many speakers here are now trying to not only do research but also put their algorithms into real life and use it to try it on the real patients. So, for example, Professor He, you have the system, and also I think Dr. Ting, as a Singapore AI program director, you must have many experience on deploying your algorithms to real hospitals. And actually, I think sometimes the doctors may not be very. I'm an AI researcher, so I see that sometimes the doctors are not very. Sometimes they think that the algorithms is not very helpful, so they do not want to change their routine workflow. So do you have any experience in this field, and how do you think we can better deploy our algorithms to hospitals and let the doctors use it? Thank you.
Shall I go first?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a very important question that actually goes back to my initial point, right? What is the intended use environment? Today we don't want to create technology and then find use cases, right? I mean, this is not the right. Of course, we can always do research and explore the new areas and stuff, right? But for the clinicians to use, or for any healthcare practitioners, whether it's clinicians, nurses, allied health professionals, to use a certain technology, first we need to understand is there a true clinical unmet need on the ground? That's number one. Different countries will have different unmet need, and different hospitals will have different needs. Second is that are we actually ready to support this AI system when we actually deploy it? How do I say that? If today my hospital has a very well established, the IT support and things, and if the AI can just, be integrated into the IT system, no problem, right? I mean, that is a good use case. But if today my hospital do not have any internet connectivity, or my hospital, the doctors, they don't really know how to use the computer and stuff. Then my question is, how do you expect these, the groups of doctors to adopt the technology? So firstly, I feel that the one very important question is the intended use environment and identify the right users for the right technology. So this is the intended use environment is more for the patients. But of course, you need to be deployed or supported within the ecosystem, which is the infrastructure. When you talk about infrastructure, you are not just talking about IT infrastructure, which what I just alluded to earlier, but you're also talking about the the supporting infrastructure, which is the manpower, the users, who's going to use it? Do they know how to use it? And do we have enough connectivity, the IT support to deploy that, right? So this is point number 2. And then number 3 is the Ministry of Health supportive of this, right? So this is also the crucial thing. Does my government support the use of the technology? If my government doesn't support at all, I mean, is there a way to actually start the conversation to convince them that this is a good technology, right, to use? So those are it's a very, if you can actually, it's not as simple as today, give me data set, give me a CNN, I build an algorithm, export or cross-validation, run it, right? I mean, independently test it. Of course, this is a very good start, right? You test the generalizability and what. But in order to deploy it, there's another 9 steps ahead before you could even hit the clinical ground. So those are the things that is very different from country to country. But this is just a few main points for you to consider when you want to deploy any AI algorithm, not just to write an AI papers, not just a pilot AI algorithm, but to actually deploy it on the ground. Those are the few steps that you have to be aware of. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the sharing. Last questions.
So maybe I ask a question to Professor Shi. Yeah.
Great.
So Professor, just take here. So actually, I know this Professor Shi is the specialist of the brain research. Because actually, today I'm talking about artificial intelligence, but Professor Shi actually is the human intelligence research. So my question is there any possible to just really fusion of the human's intelligence and the artificial intelligence from point of view of your research area? That means, is there any possibility to create such interface between the human brain and the computer? Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is a very interesting question.
Thank you very much. This is a very good question. Actually, this question is myself want to answer by myself in my next life. Honestly speaking, right now, it seems there's no direct relationship between the brain, the neuroscience, and the artificial intelligence. And we just simulate its structure from neuroscience to establish our artificial algorithm. But I think in the future, maybe we can understand how human brain works and how intelligence generated by human. Maybe we can revolutionate our AI algorithm. Maybe. So at the current stage, I have no idea. It seems has no direct relationship. Again, thanks.
It's the future science.
Yeah, future science.
Fantastic in science.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Okay, yeah, yes, please.
Hello, Daniel. I'm Jin Kai in Professor Ye Juan's team. Can I ask you a question? What do you think is the future direction of AI in ophthalmology? And your speech is, AI is very exciting.
Okay,
and how about the future direction?
Thanks for the question. And actually, just now, I think, I was asked that question, but I did emphasize the importance. But okay, let's go into more technical stuff. Okay, where do I see the future, right? Right now, there's a few different big parts, right? First is on the federated machinery, right? Data privacy rules around the world are, I think, increasingly more and more stringent. US, between the different states, cannot share data within themselves. China cannot send the data out from China. And then UK, Europe, same thing, Singapore, same thing, right? I mean, increasingly, that's something that we're going to do. How do we build models without sharing data? This is what federated machine learning can help us to do, right? So this is one big part that I think will get increasingly more and more important, and then not just in ophthalmology, but also healthcare, and also outside the healthcare setting, like energy sector and stuff, right? China have a lot of the energy companies are looking at federated machine learning to accumulate all the different data. So this is one big area that I think will get increasingly more important. Second is the explainable AI. Right now, we know we're trying to do a lot of the explainability algorithms and whatnot, but right now there's not a single one that is mature at all, right? You talk about attention map, integrated gradient method, GradCam, occlusion test in an earlier version. They're all not mature. If I run 10 different visualization techniques on all my different medical imaging, I get different heat maps, right, for the same image. How do you actually convince the users to believe that this is the right AI algorithms to use? So explainable AI, I think, is currently very hot, and you will get increasingly more and more advanced, but right now it's still at the infancy stage, even though it's been going on for a long time. Third is that Yan Goodfellow actually came up with the GAN, the network, right? Generative Adversarial Network back in 2014. How do we artificially synthesize images, right? Different fields have attempted that for the past 7 years after this concept has been described by Yan Goodfellow. And right now, if I were to synthesize image, black and white, okay, not too bad. Check X-ray, CT, MRI, brain, OCT, you know, not too bad, right? Because 2 channels, black and white channels. But if I were to synthesize the color fundus photo, APTOS imaging, skin photos, that is tough because it's RGB, right? Red, green, and blue channels. So how do you actually then create all these channels? And don't forget that the retina also have vessels. How do we actually make the vessels straight without having a discontinuity on the vessels that actually usually will make the image very fake? So those are the different the problems with GAN. Right now, of course, we go into the new style of GAN, style GAN, pro GAN. You know, there's a different GAN. You know, the application right now. Not only that, the GAN also is used not to just augment the data, but to also predict the progression of the treatment response and whatnot, right? So those are the different things that I think is worth looking at, but right now, technically speaking, again, it's not mature, right? Even though it's been going on for the past 7 years. The other thing is, what about blockchain, right? I actually published one of the papers in my group earlier this year in Lancet Digital Health. Someone mentioned that the lab published on the high myopia meta PM. Yeah, similarly, this paper also do exactly the same thing. High myopia, myopic macular degeneration. For those of you who are interested, please, you know, you can actually go online and search. So, how do we increase the transparency of AI algorithms? I see it in different. So Ming is one of my boss in you know, British Journal of Ophthalmology, right? So usually, if he asks me to handle a paper, then I was like, you know, how do I know it's right? You say you use your data set to build AI algorithms. You say my AI algorithm is available upon my request. But when I actually reach out to you and say the request, you say my hospital doesn't allow me to share. My government says my data cannot be shared. So it's a self-made kind of situation, right? You say you can offer, but when I request, you don't offer. Then how do I know the things that you actually present on the papers is rightful, right? How do I know you haven't fabricated your data? This is one of the very big, serious problems that we are finding in AI space right now, right? How do we prevent a situation in the Chinese word, right? 我讲的算, right? Because I cannot justify, I cannot reproduce, I cannot get your data to reconfirm your findings. So blockchain actually fits this unmet need. Why? Because anything, today I say I have 1,395 images in this folder, and then this is my ground truth, and this is my AI algorithms. and then if I publish and lock them within the same folders, blockchain gives you a hash value that is worth around 30 to 40 alphanumerical, that is the length. If you change one image in the folder, these 30 alphanumerical values will change. This is what we call hash values. So this is something that we know it provides transparency and integrity in the things that you do. So this is also one of the features of blockchain that gives you an immutable, meaning that anything that is published on the blockchain platform, you cannot change it, right? This is something that what the cryptocurrency, I know that China is, the cryptocurrency is not encouraged in China right now. But if you look outside China right now, in US, UK, Europe, they are all trending towards that direction. How do we use the blockchain technology, but not in the crypto side, but the blockchain in the the logistic tracking and things, right? This is something that I think blockchain also has a role to play. What about cybersecurity attack, right? We haven't even talked about the cybersecurity attack. Now we are just busy building models and models and models, validating, revalidating, testing, and trying to publish the papers, right? How do we prevent cybersecurity attack, right? How do you prevent the hackers hack into your system, do something funny with your image? Yeah, so those are the different things that is happening. So if we actually were to look forward to 10, 15 years time, there's tons of the things we can do right now to prepare for that to happen. So I've just actually mentioned quite a few big parts of the domains that I think if anyone sitting in the room were to actually invest the next 5 to 10 years time, these are some of the areas that is good investment. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, thank you. And one more question for Professor He. How do you think about how we share data from different hospitals and different countries safely? How can we guarantee the security?
In terms of data sharing, it's not just safety.
Yeah.
But also, there's a lot of policy, regulation. So this is really the barriers for effective data sharing. So at what Daniel already mentioned, there's a federated AI that instead of asking people to share raw data with you, you can just send them the AI algorithm, let them run through the data locally in your hospital without requiring sharing the raw data. That would be a way to go. But anyway, this is a very complex issue. Different countries, even like, for example, India, China, we have this data protection policy, privacy protection. It's quite challenging at the moment.
Thank you, thank you.
We have a very exciting discussion session. I think the time has won't permit us to discussing furthermore. So many thanks for the specialists attending here, and it's particularly let me express my appreciation to the overseas specialists just give us a very valuable speech, very nice presentation to us, and we just learned much about the AI and ophthalmology from your speech. Thanks to the Dr. King, thanks to the Professor Ting and Dr. He Mingguang, our old friends. Yeah, thank you. Let's just pick